Sarah stood alone at the train station, heartbroken. "You're too poor for my family," Thomas had said before leaving with his rich bride. She had nothing left, no money, no home, no hope. Then a kind cowboy walked up and changed everything with just a few words. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The train whistle blew long and loud across the dusty town of Sunset Ridge. Sarah clutched her small cloth bag tighter as she stood on the wooden platform. Her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. "I can't marry someone like you," Thomas had said just an hour ago. His voice was cold like winter wind. "My family expects me to marry someone with money. Someone who can help our business grow. You understand, don't you?" Sarah had understood. She understood that 3 years of love meant nothing when money was involved. She understood that all his sweet words were just lies. She understood that she was alone in this world again. The train doors opened with a heavy thud. People walked out with their fancy clothes and leather bags. Thomas stepped down wearing his best suit. Behind him walked a woman in a beautiful blue dress. She had jewels around her neck that sparkled in the afternoon sun. "There she is," Thomas pointed at Sarah. "The girl I told you about. She was just helping at the house. Nothing more." The woman in blue looked at Sarah like she was looking at dirt on her shoe. "I see. Well, make sure she knows her place." Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes, but she would not cry in front of them. She would not give them that satisfaction. She turned to walk away, but Thomas grabbed her arm. "Sarah, wait. Here." He pushed some coins into her hand. "Take this and go back to your family. Find a nice farm boy to marry. Someone more suitable for your situation." The coins felt heavy and cold in her palm. Sarah looked at them and then at Thomas. Without saying a word, she threw the money at his feet. The coins scattered across the wooden boards of the platform. "Keep your guilt money," she said quietly. "I don't want anything from you." She picked up her bag and walked away. Behind her, she could hear the woman in blue laughing. The sound cut through her heart like a knife. Sarah had nowhere to go. Her parents had died when she was 16. She had been working as a teacher in the small schoolhouse, saving every penny to marry Thomas. Now she had nothing and no one. She sat down on a wooden bench at the far end of the platform. The sun was getting lower in the sky, painting everything orange and red. Soon it would be dark and she still had no place to sleep. "Excuse me, miss?" Sarah looked up. A tall man in cowboy clothes was standing near her. He had kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. His hat was worn but clean, and his boots were dusty from riding. "Are you all right? You look like you could use some help." Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm fine, thank you." The cowboy sat down on the bench, leaving space between them. "My name is Jake Morrison. I work on the ranch outside of town. I saw what happened over there with that fancy man and his lady friend." "You saw that?" Sarah felt her cheeks turn red with shame. "I did. And I want to tell you something. That man is a fool. A complete fool." Sarah looked at Jake with surprise. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you have more dignity in your little finger than he has in his whole body. I know you threw his money back at him when you could have taken it. I know you're sitting here alone instead of begging him to take you back." Jake took off his hat and held it in his hands. "I also know that you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "Sir, you don't need to say such things to make me feel better." "I'm not saying it to make you feel better. I'm saying it because it's true." They sat in silence for a moment. Sarah could smell the leather and horses on Jake's clothes. It was a good, honest smell. Different from Thomas's fancy cologne. "Where will you go now?" Jake asked gently. "I don't know. I was supposed to marry Thomas next month. I gave up my teaching job. I sold everything I owned to buy a wedding dress." Sarah's voice began to shake. "I have nothing left." Jake was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to face her completely. "Sarah, that is your name, isn't it? Sarah, I have a proposition for you." Sarah looked at him with careful eyes. "What kind of proposition?" "The kind that might sound crazy, but hear me out. My ranch is doing well. I have a good house, plenty of food, and a stable life. But I'm lonely. I've been lonely for years." Jake twisted his hat in his hands. "I'm looking for a wife. A real partner. Someone who will work beside me, laugh with me, and build a life together. I don't care about fancy dresses or jewelry. I care about character and heart." Sarah's eyes grew wide. "Sir, you don't know anything about me." "I know enough. I've been watching you around town for months. I've seen you teaching the children at the school. I've seen you helping Mrs. Patterson with her groceries when she was sick. I've seen you giving your lunch to hungry children. Jake leaned forward slightly. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, but you were always with that Thomas fellow. I figured you were spoken for. Sarah felt confused and overwhelmed. This is all happening so fast. I just lost everything an hour ago, and now you're asking me to marry you? I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes the best things in life are crazy. Jake stood up and held out his hand to her. Come with me. Let me show you the ranch. Meet my horses. See the house. If you don't like it, I'll bring you back to town tomorrow and help you figure out what to do next. Sarah looked at his outstretched hand. It was strong and weathered from hard work. She thought about her other choice, spending the night on this bench with nowhere to go in the morning. All right, she said, taking his hand. I'll come see your ranch. Jake's face lit up with joy. Really? You mean it? I mean it. But this doesn't mean I'm saying yes to marrying you. I just need somewhere to think and figure out my life. Of course. No pressure at all. I just want you to see that there's another option. A better option. Jake helped her into his wagon. The seat was simple but comfortable. As they rode out of town, Sarah could see the train station getting smaller behind them. She felt like she was leaving her old life behind forever. The ride to Jake's ranch took about an hour. As they traveled, Jake told her about his life. He had inherited the ranch from his uncle 5 years ago. He raised horses and cattle. He had 2 hired hands who worked for him, Old Pete and young Billy. They were like family to him. Do you have any real family? Sarah asked. My parents died in a fever when I was 20. My uncle took me in and taught me everything about ranching. When he passed, he left me everything. Jake looked at the road ahead. I always thought I'd have a wife and children by now to share it with. Why don't you? Jake was quiet for a moment. I guess I never found the right woman. Most of the ladies in town want to marry someone rich who lives in the city. They don't want the ranch life. It's hard work and simple living. What's wrong with hard work and simple living? Jake turned to look at her with surprise. You really think that? Of course. I've been working hard my whole life. I don't need fancy things to be happy. I just need. Sarah paused. What do you need? I need someone who is honest. Someone who won't change their mind about me when something better comes along. Someone who sees me as valuable just as I am. Jake stopped the wagon. He turned to face her completely. Sarah, you are valuable just as you are. You are more than valuable. You are precious. Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes again, but this time they weren't sad tears. How can you say that? You barely know me. I know your heart. I've seen it in action for months. That's all I need to know. They continued riding as the sun set behind the mountains. Soon Sarah could see lights in the distance. As they got closer, she could make out a house, a barn, and several smaller buildings. This is it, Jake said. This is home. The house was simple but well built. It had a wide front porch with 2 rocking chairs. Flowers grew in boxes under the windows. Everything looked clean and cared for. It's beautiful, Sarah said, and she meant it. Come inside. I'll make some coffee and show you around. The inside of the house was even better than the outside. The furniture was simple but comfortable. The kitchen was clean and well stocked. There were books on the shelves and pictures on the walls. You read? Sarah asked, looking at the books. Every chance I get. Do you? I love reading. I was a teacher, remember? Jake smiled. I remember everything about you. As Jake made coffee, Sarah looked around the house. She could see herself living here. She could picture herself cooking in the kitchen, reading by the fireplace, sitting on the front porch in the evenings. Here. Jake handed her a cup of coffee. I hope you like it strong. I do. Sarah took a sip. It was perfect. They sat at the kitchen table and Jake told her more about the ranch. He talked about his horses with love and pride. He told her about the challenges and rewards of ranch life. He painted a picture of a simple but good life. Where would I sleep tonight? Sarah asked. There's a spare bedroom upstairs. It has its own lock on the door. You'll be completely safe and private. Sarah nodded. And tomorrow? Tomorrow I'll take you back to town if you want. Or you can stay longer and think about things. Or. Jake stopped talking. Or what? Or you can say yes to marrying me and we can start planning our life together. Sarah set down her coffee cup. Jake, can I ask you something? Anything. Why me really? There must be other women who would want this life. Jake was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke slowly and carefully. Do you really want to know? Yes. I've been watching you for 8 months. Every Sunday at church, every day when you walked to school, every time you went to the general store. I've seen you be kind to everyone, even people who weren't kind to you. I've seen you work hard without complaining. I've seen you put others before yourself. Jake leaned forward. But more than all that, I've seen your smile. When you smile at those children you teach, your whole face lights up. When you help someone, you look truly happy. That's the kind of happiness I want in my life. That's the kind of woman I want to build a future with. But what about love? Sarah asked quietly. Thomas said he loved me. Thomas lied. Love isn't just words. Love is action. Love is choosing someone every day, not just when it's easy. Jake reached across the table and gently touched her hand. I may not know you well yet, but I already care about you more than Thomas ever did. I can already see myself loving you for the rest of my life. Sarah felt her heart racing. This is all so fast. It doesn't have to be fast. We can take our time. We can get to know each other properly. But Sarah, I want you to know something. What? You're not too poor for me. You're not too anything for me. You're exactly what I've been waiting for my whole life. Sarah started crying then. Not sad tears, but tears of relief and hope. For the first time in years, someone saw her as enough just as she was. Hey now, Jake said gently. He handed her his handkerchief. It's okay. I'm sorry. It's just, no one has ever said things like that to me before. Then they were all fools. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at Jake. Really looked at him. She saw kindness in his eyes, strength in his hands, and honesty in his face. She saw a man who would keep his promises. Jake. Yes. Can I see the horses tomorrow? Jake's face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. Of course you can. I have a mare named Buttercup who I think you'll love. And can you show me how the ranch works? I can show you everything. And can we take some time to get to know each other? Really know each other? All the time you need. Sarah smiled then. A real smile. The first real smile she had felt in weeks. Then yes. I'd like to stay and see if this could work. Jake stood up so fast he almost knocked over his chair. Really? You mean it? I mean it. But Jake. Yes. I want to do this right. I want us to court properly. I want to be sure this is real for both of us. Of course, whatever you want. Over the next few weeks, Jake showed Sarah every part of ranch life. She met the horses and learned to ride. She met old Pete and young Billy who welcomed her like family. She learned to milk cows, gather eggs, and help with the daily work of the ranch. More importantly, she and Jake spent hours talking. They talked about their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. They talked about books they had read, places they wanted to visit, and the kind of life they wanted to build together. Sarah learned that Jake was even kinder than she had first thought. He was patient when she made mistakes learning ranch work. He was gentle with the animals. He was generous with his hired hands. He was everything Thomas had pretended to be. Jake learned that Sarah was stronger than she looked. She wasn't afraid of hard work. She had a good sense of humor. She was smart and thoughtful. She was everything he had hoped for and more. One evening, about a month after Sarah had arrived at the ranch, they were sitting on the front porch watching the sunset. Sarah was mending one of Jake's shirts and Jake was whittling a piece of wood. Sarah? Yes. Do you ever think about Thomas anymore? Sarah looked up from her sewing. Sometimes. But not the way you might think. What do you mean? I think about how lucky I am that he showed his true colors before I married him. I think about how different my life would have been if I had become his wife. I think about how grateful I am that he left me at that train station. Jake stopped whittling. Really? Really? If he hadn't left me there, I never would have met you. I never would have found this life. Sarah set down her sewing and looked at Jake. I never would have found real love. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Love? Sarah blushed but didn't look away. Yes, love. I love you, Jake Morrison. I love your kindness, your honesty, your hard work. I love the way you treat me like I'm precious. I love the life we're building together. Jake set down his whittling and moved closer to her on the porch swing. Sarah, I love you too. More than I ever thought possible. You've brought joy and light into my life. He took her hands in his. Will you marry me? For real this time? Sarah smiled. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Jake kissed her then, gentle and sweet under the stars. It was nothing like the kisses she had shared with Thomas. This kiss was full of promise and real love. They were married 2 weeks later in the little church in Sunset Ridge. Old Pete and young Billy were witnesses. Mrs. Patterson from town came and brought flowers from her garden. Even some of Sarah's former students came to wish her well. As Sarah walked down the aisle in a simple white dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her make, she saw Jake waiting for her at the altar. His face was full of joy and love. He looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. When the preacher asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Sarah heard a familiar voice from the back of the church. "I object." Everyone turned around. Thomas stood in the doorway in his fancy suit, with the woman in blue beside him. "Sarah, you can't marry this cowboy. You belong with me. I made a mistake." Sarah looked at Thomas, then at Jake, then back at Thomas. She smiled. "Thomas, I don't belong with you. I never did. You made that very clear when you left me at the train station because I was too poor for your family." She turned to face Jake completely. "I belong here with a man who loves me just as I am. With a man who sees my worth. With a man who chose me not because of what I have, but because of who I am." Jake stepped forward and took Sarah's hand. He looked directly at Thomas. "Thomas, you had your chance with the most wonderful woman in the world and you threw it away. That was your choice. Now she's making her choice and she's choosing me." Jake turned to Sarah with love shining in his eyes. "Sarah, you are all I ever wanted. You are everything I ever dreamed of. You are my heart, my future, my home." Sarah felt tears of joy rolling down her cheeks. "And you are mine." The preacher smiled. "Well then, let's continue with this wedding." Thomas and the woman in blue left the church in a huff, but Sarah barely noticed. All she could see was Jake and the beautiful life they were about to begin together. After they were pronounced husband and wife, the whole congregation cheered. Old Pete played his fiddle, and young Billy had somehow managed to find a cake. The celebration was simple but full of joy. That night, as Mr. and Mrs. Jake Morrison sat on their front porch under the stars, Sarah thought about how much her life had changed in just 2 months. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked as if he could read her thoughts. "Giving up your old life?" Sarah leaned against his shoulder. "I didn't give up my old life. My old life was taken away from me by someone who didn't value me. Then I found my real life with someone who does. I do value you, Sarah. More than you'll ever know." "I know." "And Jake." "Yes, my love. Thank you for seeing me when I was lost. Thank you for offering me a home when I had nowhere to go. Thank you for loving me when I felt unlovable." Jake kissed the top of her head. "Sarah, you were never unlovable. You were just waiting for the right person to see how amazing you are." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. In the distance, they could hear the horses moving in the pasture. An owl hooted from somewhere in the darkness. The wind rustled through the trees. "Jake." "Yes. I want to tell you something." "What's that?" "That day at the train station when you first talked to me, you saved my life. Not just from being homeless but from believing I wasn't worth loving." Jake turned to look at her in the moonlight. "Sarah, you saved my life too. You brought love and laughter into my lonely world. You made my house into a home." Sarah smiled and kissed her husband. "Then we saved each other." "Yes," Jake said, holding her close. "We did." Years later, when people in Sunset Ridge would tell the story of Jake and Sarah Morrison, they would say it was the most romantic thing they had ever seen. How a cowboy had rescued a heartbroken woman from the train station and given her a life full of love. But Jake and Sarah knew the real truth. They had rescued each other. Sarah had given Jake someone to love and care for. Jake had given Sarah someone who saw her true worth. Together they built a life full of simple pleasures and deep love. They raised horses, grew a garden, and eventually welcomed children who filled their house with laughter. They never had much money, but they had everything that mattered. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, they would sit on their front porch and remember that day at the train station when their lives changed forever. They would remember how Sarah had been left behind for being too poor, and how Jake had seen that she was actually rich in all the ways that mattered. "You know what the funny thing is?" Sarah said one evening many years later. "What's that?" Jake asked, holding her hand like he had every day since they were married. "Thomas thought I wasn't good enough for him because I didn't have money. But you knew I was perfect for you because of what was in my heart." Jake smiled and squeezed her hand. "Sarah Morrison, you are still all I ever wanted. Every single day you are all I ever wanted." And as the sun set over their ranch, painting the sky in beautiful colors, Sarah knew she was exactly where she belonged. She was home.